How does one drunk confession at an anniversary turn into the end of a marriage in front of everyone? Why did my husband stay calm, wait, and let me humiliate him before answering with quiet documents instead of a fight? What if the villain of the story is really the only one who stayed lawful and clear? My name is Tamsin Ever, and if you met me at work, you would probably think I had a good life and a normal marriage. I like that people think this because it means I can still pretend that I am the reasonable one. I have a husband, a daughter, a small apartment with white walls and a balcony that gets weak morning light. On paper, it all looks fine. In my head, it feels like a trap. And I tell myself, that is why I did what I did. Why I kept going back to my ex whenever I felt that small panic in my chest that my life was slipping away. That morning in the kitchen, the light was grey and flat, and Daniel moved around me in that quiet way he has now. He made coffee, rinsed his mug, and set it near the back of the counter. My mug sat near the sink, still with yesterday's milk film at the bottom. The two mugs were like us, I thought, not touching, facing different directions. I told myself he had pushed me away first, long before Joel ever wrote to me again. I had to believe that, or I would have to admit that I was the one who started to pull the thread. Hannah sat at the table drawing something with too many stars. Daniel asked if she wanted toast and she nodded, and he did not look at me. The silence felt like a small slap. I told myself he enjoyed making me feel invisible. In truth, he had stopped trying to force any kind of talk, and that was the problem. I used to scream and he used to follow me, ask again and again what was wrong. After a while, he stopped. He said once that nothing he said changed anything, so he was tired. I heard that as cruelty, not exhaustion. My phone lay near the kettle, and the little preview bar showed a new notification from Joel. It was only a couple of words, some light joke from the night before, but it made my stomach flutter. I locked the screen before Daniel could see and told myself it was harmless. Joel understood the part of me that still felt young, I thought. Daniel only saw a tired mother and a long to-do list. When I feel this difference, I call it proof that I deserve something more. It is easier than calling it selfishness. Later, while Hannah put on her shoes for school, Daniel's phone lit up on the counter. I was not trying to snoop, but my eyes went straight to it. A calendar alert showed on the screen, a small blue strip that read, Riverside 8:10 a.m. There was no other detail. Riverside is not a place we go together. I asked where he was going this morning, but I said it in a joking voice, not in a serious way. He answered that he had a meeting before class and that he would be back in time for dinner. He spoke calmly, like this was normal. I laughed and said he was getting mysterious, but inside I felt a sharp pinch of annoyance that he had any life I did not fully see. After he left with Hannah, the apartment felt too quiet. I made new coffee and opened my messages. Joel had sent another story about his latest project, and he wrote that he missed having me around when he worked. I felt important again. I replied that home was heavy and tiring now, that Daniel was cold and distant and hardly touched me anymore. I did not say that I had been turning away from Daniel for months, making excuses, claiming I was tired or busy. It is easier to say someone has changed than to admit you are the one who shut the door. When they came home in the evening, I noticed something different in Daniel's eyes. He did not ask how my day was. He listened when I complained about the traffic and about Jana giving me too much work, but he did not chase the conversation. He lay his wallet and keys on a different part of the counter than usual and went to shower. I told myself he was sulking. His calm made me feel guilty for a moment, then angry, and then I went back to my phone to check if Joel had replied. At bedtime, the distance grew another inch. Daniel went to bed earlier than me and lay at the far edge of the mattress, facing away. I lay on my back and scrolled through Joel's old photos. I told myself I was only looking, that everyone looks. I thought about the way Joel used to make me feel alive when we were younger, how he once said, I lit up a room. Daniel now mostly just said things about schedules and forms and school reminders. I twisted that in my mind and told myself a good husband should never let romance die, and that my choices were just a reaction to his failure. Hannah climbed between us in the middle of the night and fell asleep with her feet near Daniel's ribs and her head on my arm. In the morning, she asked why Daddy was so close to the edge of the bed. I laughed and said he liked the cold side, that it was just his habit. She looked at me for a long moment, like she knew it was not the whole answer, and then she went to wash her face. I felt a tiny sting but pushed it down. Children do not understand adult problems, I told myself. It was better to keep things light. Later that day, I called my best friend, Mila, on my way home from work. I told her Daniel had become even more distant, that he hardly reacted when I snapped at him, that he made me feel like I was crazy for wanting more. I left out the part where I had met Joel last week in a quiet cafe and let him touch my hand across the table for too long. Mila said that men like Daniel only wake up when they think they might lose you. I smiled at that and told myself that maybe my little secrets were a kind of therapy, a way to remind myself I was still wanted. That night, when I walked into the bedroom, I saw Daniel's phone on the nightstand again, face down this time. My own phone buzzed in my hand with a new message from Joel just as the door latch clicked, and Daniel came in without a word. I slipped my phone under the pillow and pretended to be checking the alarm. The next morning at the office, I walked in like nothing was wrong. My name tag on the lanyard hit my chest as I moved, and I liked how official it looked. At work, I was not a tired wife or a nagging mother. I was Tamsin Ever, the one who fixed client problems, the one people came to when they needed a pitch to sound sharp. That was the story I liked. It made it easier not to think about how I had slipped out last week to meet Joel at a cafe and how my hand stayed in his for one beat longer than it should have. Joel was already at his desk when I came in, leaning back in his chair like he owned the place. He asked how my night was, and I said it was the same as always. Cold husband, busy child, a woman slowly dying under laundry. He laughed and called me dramatic in his own way, and I pretended to be offended, but I liked how he looked at me. His eyes stayed on my face, not on the floor or on a list of chores. I told myself this meant something deep about who understood me and who did not. During the morning meeting, he sat next to me, close enough that our shoulders touched when we shifted. When Jana asked for ideas about the new campaign, I spoke up, and Joel backed me loudly. He said my idea was the only one with any real fire. Jana said it was good but needed more data. After the meeting, Joel rolled his chair over and said Jana just did not get passion. I replied that my husband did not get it either, that he only cared about budgets and forms. I could feel Kara's eyes on me from across the table, and she turned back to her screen with a tight jaw. By lunchtime, people were already talking about evening drinks. We had hit our targets, and that was always a reason to celebrate. Joel reminded me of the rooftop bar near the office and said we should all go, that it would be therapy for me. I told him I needed to check with Daniel about Hannah, but I said it in a bored tone, like my family was just another task. He laughed and said I worked too hard at home. I liked that line so much that I saved it in my head for later. When I went to make coffee in the small office kitchen, Kara came in behind me. She said she had seen the photos from last week's drinks and asked if I thought the one of Joel's hand on my waist might be a bit much. I told her she was reading too much into it, that it was just a joke, that my husband knew I was loyal. I did not say that Daniel had not actually liked that photo or said anything about it. She nodded but did not seem convinced. I told myself she was jealous or old-fashioned, because that was easier than thinking she might be right. That evening on the rooftop, the air felt light and cool, and the city looked soft under us. Music played just loud enough to blur real thoughts. Joel stood close, his arm pressing to mine as he leaned in to hear me. Someone ordered shots, for the brave ones, and everyone shouted. I thought about texting Daniel to say I would be late, but I decided not to. He would see the time and figure it out. He always did. I called that trust in my head, but it was really something else. When the drinks arrived, Joel lifted his glass and said this was for people who did not let life turn them into furniture. Everyone laughed. I spoke up and said my husband was already half armchair, half spreadsheet. A couple of co-workers shouted that I was savage, and someone started filming on their phone. I put on a big smile and leaned my head toward Joel, like it was all just harmless fun. Inside, I felt a small rush, the way you feel when you step too close to the edge of a high place. I posted a photo later, one of Joel standing behind me with his hand on my shoulder, the city lights in the background. I cropped it so other people were out of frame. I wrote "Work husband saves the day" and added a laughing emoji. I did not tag Daniel. It did not fit the joke. Notifications started to pop up at once. Likes, heart reactions, comments from girls who said they loved our energy. I told myself this was proof that I was not crazy, that other people saw what a good match Joel and I could be. By the time I got home, the apartment was quiet. Hannah was already in bed, and the kitchen was very neat, more than usual. There were 2 small stacks of mail on the counter. One pile had my name, one had Daniel's. His wallet and keys were on a different hook by the door, not on the tray we had always used. I asked why he had moved everything around, and he answered that it made it easier to keep track of what was his and what was mine. I said he sounded like he was getting ready to move out. He said he was just being practical. I opened one of the envelopes with my name on it and saw a bill I had never even thought about before. He explained how much it was and when it had to be paid, like he was giving a lesson. I told him he was being dramatic, that other husbands just paid things and did not make their wives do math. He did not argue. He just wrote the due date on a sticky note and put it under a small magnet on the fridge. Later, when I walked past his open laptop on the table, I saw a spreadsheet on the screen. It had dates and initials in a clean grid. There was no title at the top. When he heard my steps, he reached over and minimized it in one smooth motion. I teased him, asked if he was planning a surprise for me. He said it was just boring school stuff. His voice was calm, but his jaw was tight. My phone buzzed while we stood there, and I saw a notification that someone had tagged me in the rooftop photo. I smiled to myself. As I looked back at Daniel's phone on the counter, another small light appeared. A recurring event slid across the screen for a second. Meeting. Personal. Downtown. 11:45 a.m. The label sat there like a secret. I asked what it was, and he said it was nothing I needed to worry about, just something he had to take care of. I laughed and told him he was suddenly full of mystery, like he was trying to copy Joel. He did not respond to that. He only picked up his phone, turned the screen face down, and walked toward the hallway. A few days after the rooftop night, we had dinner plans for a friend's birthday at a busy family restaurant. The long table was already half full when we arrived. My name was on a folded card near the middle, with Joel's name right next to it, and I told myself this was a sign the universe agreed with me. Daniel ended up near the end of the table, closer to the kids' menu and the high chairs. It looked like a joke, like the seating chart itself was saying who belonged with fun and who belonged with chores. Before we left the apartment, I had passed by the small home office and smelled something odd, a sharp, dry smell in the air. I heard the low hum of the printer and saw a blank page slide out and fall into the tray. Daniel stood there, hand on the side of the machine. I asked if he was finally printing love notes, and he said he was just sorting some school things. On the shelf above, I noticed our old thin binder labelled Utilities had grown thick with papers, and next to it sat a second binder, neat and new, split into sections marked Home, Auto, Bank. I made a joke about him turning into a librarian. He only said that someone had to stay organised. His tone was calm, and that annoyed me more than any sharp reply would have. At the restaurant, the air was loud and warm, full of clinking plates and kids shouting. Joel waved when he saw me, and his face lit up in a way that Daniel's never did anymore. I told myself that kind of light meant real love. Daniel pulled out a chair for Hannah and sat beside her. I sat between Joel and Mila. I decided I would make this night fun, and that meant not worrying about Daniel's moods. That was the story I fed myself. The birthday friend stood up to thank everyone for coming, and someone called for a toast. Glasses were raised, people shouted, and someone at the far end of the table lifted their phone to start recording the moment. Joel nudged me and said I should say something because I was the word person. I loved how he framed that, like I was the star of the show. I stood a little, glass in hand, and said that we were all getting older and needed to remember to keep some fire in our lives. I added that some of us had become more like furniture than people. A few people laughed. I looked down the table at Daniel. He was cutting Hannah's food, focused on her plate. I wanted a reaction, and I was not getting one, so I pushed more. I said that some husbands were so safe and quiet that a wife could fall asleep standing up, that they were half armchair, half spreadsheet. Joel laughed loudly and clinked my glass. A few friends shouted that I was savage and begged for another line. Someone near Mila moved their phone, aiming it more clearly at me. I felt like I was in a small spotlight and I liked it. Daniel finally looked up. Our eyes met for a moment. His face did not twist or flush. He did not tell me to stop or pull me aside. He just looked at me, then at Hannah, then back at his plate. I told myself he was weak, that a real man would fight for his place. I did not let myself think that maybe he was simply done with scenes. The conversation flowed on. Joel leaned close and asked, in his own words, if Daniel was mad. I said he would go home and sulk and pretend nothing was wrong, that he loved to play silent victim. I did not mention that I had been the one talking behind his back, posting pictures with another man, acting like our whole life together was a joke. Mila joined in and said Daniel was lucky anyone as fun as me even noticed him anymore. People laughed, but the sound had a tight edge. Hannah tugged at my sleeve at one point and asked if Daddy was sad. I told her he was just tired from teaching all day, that grown-up faces are sometimes confusing. She looked scared instead of comforted. Daniel gently told her she did not have to listen to grown-up jokes. He got up and asked if she wanted to look at the dessert case. She nodded quickly and walked away with him. I said loudly that he was doing his sulk walk again. A couple of people laughed. Some did not. On the drive home, the silence felt thick. I expected him to explode, to ask how I could talk that way in front of everyone. Instead, he asked Hannah if she had liked the ice cream. He asked what her favourite part of the night was. She said the cake, not the jokes. I sat in the front seat, hot with a strange mix of shame and anger. When we got home, he helped her into pyjamas and read her a chapter from her book. I heard her giggle softly, calm again. Later, in the kitchen, I tried to start a fight. I said he had embarrassed me by walking off with Hannah during my toast. I said he made me look like a crazy person. He answered that he would not stand there while our marriage was turned into a game for strangers. His voice was low and steady. He said he would not argue about it anymore. Then he put his phone on the counter, screen face down but still connected to the charger. It was fully charged, like he always made sure now. When I passed the calendar on the wall, I noticed a small red circle around a date from earlier that week, with a note under it in his handwriting, paper drop, 3:40 p.m. I thought it must be some teacher thing, maybe a form hand in. I did not ask. It felt like I might not like the answer. So instead I texted Mila about how ungrateful Daniel was and told her I might shake things up even more soon. She replied with a string of laughing emojis and said I was on fire lately. I held on to that. Back at the restaurant before we left, there had been a moment that stayed with me. Someone at the table had started a chant for one more story, and phones had risen again, the screens glinting under the warm lights. I saw Daniel's hand tighten on Hannah's small shoulder as he signalled for the waiter and asked for the bill in a very level voice. He did not shout. He did not plead. He just decided he was done. Saturday at the park, the sky was bright but the air felt cold. I sat on a bench while Hannah climbed the jungle gym, her hair sticking to her cheeks as she laughed. I watched Daniel walk toward us from the parking lot with a folded flyer in his hand, some school thing he had picked up on the way. He moved like he always does now, calm and slow, as if nothing could knock him off balance. I told myself that calm was fake, that he was just hiding how much he needed me, but a small part of me wondered if he was already gone inside. Lena came to sit next to me, her gym bag on the ground at her feet. She asked how the birthday dinner went, and I told her the edited version. I said I had told some hard truths about Daniel being boring and everyone had agreed with me. I did not mention the way the laughter had turned flat by the end or how Cara and her partner had left early. Lena said men like Daniel suffocate women, that a woman should never apologize for wanting passion. I nodded and told her about Joel, but in a soft way, like it was a maybe, not a regular thing. I left out the details of hotel rooms and half days off work. I called it a little crush instead of an affair. Daniel came over and asked if I had signed the school permission form for Hannah's small science trip. I said I had been too busy, and he replied that he had already done it, just in case. His voice was polite and that irritated me. I snapped that he was trying to make me look like a bad mother. He said he just did not want Hannah to miss out because of confusion. He did not raise his voice. He did not roll his eyes. He just held the form out like a piece of simple, neutral information. I hated that. It made me feel small. When he walked away to push Hannah on the swing, Lena leaned closer and said he was using soft control, that quiet men could be worse than loud ones. I liked that phrase at once. It gave me something new to throw at him. I told myself that every time he handled a task without asking me, he was undermining me, not helping. It is funny how easy it is to spin a good act into a bad one when you need to feel right. Later that day, we drove to his parents' house for tea. I did not want to go, but he said his mother had been asking to see Hannah. The living room smelled like lemon cleaner and old books. Elaine hugged Hannah and then hugged me a little too tightly, like she was trying to read my thoughts through my ribs. Robert sat in his usual chair, the TV turned off for once. It felt like a small meeting more than a casual visit. We sat with our cups while Hannah played with a box of old blocks on the floor. Elaine asked if everything was okay between us. Her eyes were on Daniel, but her question was for both of us. I smiled and said we were fine, just busy, and joked that Daniel had turned into a walking planner. He stayed quiet. She asked, in a careful way, if I was happy. I said happiness was a strange word and that sometimes people outgrow their first choices. I watched her face tighten around her eyes. Elaine asked me directly if there was someone else. It was like she had opened a window and let cold air into the room. I said nothing was technically wrong, that I was just confused and trying to remember who I really was. I used soft phrases like finding myself and needing space because they sound cleaner than cheating. I told her Daniel had become distant and that his silence felt like punishment. I did not talk about my own distance, my own secrets, my own late messages with Joel. Elaine looked at Daniel and said that a marriage could not survive constant public jokes and private secrets. She did not raise her voice, but I felt it. She told him, in her calm way, that he did not have to stand still if he felt humiliated, that he had a duty to protect Hannah as well as himself. I heard it as an attack on me. I said she was taking his side, that she had always thought I was not good enough. She answered that loyalty still mattered, even in modern marriages. Robert said very little, but when he did speak, he told Daniel he would support him in whatever he decided to do. He did not look at me when he said it. Back at home, I passed the small office again. Daniel was inside, standing at the desk. When he heard my steps, I heard the soft click of a drawer locking. He said he was just organizing school things and changing how he keeps his files. On the wall planner, I noticed a date 3 weeks ahead circled in red, with the note Oak Ridge 9:05 p.m. written underneath. I asked if it was some staff event. He said it was just something he needed to attend. No more detail. His computer screen showed a very clean desktop for a moment, with only 2 main folders visible, each labeled in simple letters, Archive A and Archive B. As I came closer, he closed the laptop. That night, when we tucked Hannah in, she held onto his hand a little longer than usual. After he kissed her head and walked to the door, she turned to me and asked if Daddy liked Joel. The question surprised me. I laughed and said Daddy did not really know Joel. She frowned and said she had heard me say Joel was more fun and that Daddy was boring. I told her adults say silly things when they are tired, and that she should not worry. She did not look convinced. When I went to our bedroom later, I found Daniel already lying down, his phone on the nightstand. The screen lit up for a second with a notification at the top, a message thread called Follow Up, before the light went dark again. I asked who was following up on what. He said it was nothing, just something he needed to take care of. I told him he was being secretive, that he had no right to complain about my phone if he had threads like that. He did not answer. Instead, he turned off the lamp and lay still. I lay awake for a while, scrolling through old photos of Joel and me, trying to pick which ones proved we were meant to be. In the dark, Hannah's small voice from earlier echoed in my head, that sharp little question she had asked in a whisper. By the time our anniversary week came, the air in the apartment felt different, like all the oxygen had been sorted into neat labelled boxes that I could not open. Daniel moved through the rooms with this quiet control that made me feel messy just by standing next to him. My name is still on the lease, my clothes still hang in the wardrobe, but sometimes I looked at him and had the strange thought that I was the guest now, and he was the one who really lived here. One night I stood on the balcony with a glass of cheap white wine, looking down at the street. The city lights did their soft flicker thing, and my phone buzzed with a message from Joel. He asked when we were going to celebrate properly, just the two of us. I typed back that our official anniversary was coming, that the rooftop bar plan was already in place, that things with Daniel were hanging by a thread. I wrote that phrase very quickly, hanging by a thread, as if I was the one in danger. I did not say I was the one cutting the rope. Behind me, through the sliding door, I saw the glow of Daniel's laptop on the dining table. He was alone, typing, his back straight. As I walked in, a small pop-up appeared at the corner of his screen that said, "File uploaded successfully." Before I could read more, he closed the lid in one smooth move. I made a joke about him finally backing up his boring teacher worksheets. He answered that it was important to keep records. I laughed and said only people planning to run away talk like that. He just shrugged and asked what time I needed the car tomorrow. The next afternoon we went to the supermarket together, which used to feel like a small date when we were younger. This time it felt like a meeting. He placed items in the cart in two loose groups. On one side he put things like milk, bread, toilet paper. On the other side he set my hair products, my favourite snacks, the candles I liked. At the checkout, he asked the cashier to ring the first group on one transaction and the second on another. I asked what he was doing. He said he wanted a clear picture of shared costs and personal costs. His tone was almost kind. I told him that normal husbands just paid for their wives and did not run reports on shampoo. He answered that clarity was good for everyone, especially now that things were unstable. In the car on the way home, I told him he was threatening me with money. I said he wanted to scare me into being a good wife. He said that he could not control what I did, and that he was not trying to punish me, only to make sure he understood our situation. I twisted that in my head into a kind of cruelty. It was easier than asking why he suddenly needed such a clear picture, why he seemed to be drawing lines between us where none had been before. Later that week, I opened the drawer where we keep our tax papers, looking for an old receipt. Taped to the inside of the folder marked Taxes was a small USB stick with only a date written on it in neat blue ink. I stared at it and felt a small cold spot form under my ribs. I asked Daniel what it was. He said it was where he stored things he did not want to lose, nothing I needed to worry about. I laughed and called him dramatic, said he was acting like some spy in a movie. He just smiled without humour and went back to rinsing Hannah's lunchbox in the sink. On the kitchen wall, the calendar showed our anniversary in thick red ink. I had written Rooftop Bar 7:30 p.m, 10 years with a little heart next to it. Under that, in smaller writing in his pen, was another line. Downtown 4:15 p.m, personal. I circled it with my finger and asked if he was getting a secret tattoo. He said it was just an appointment, nothing exciting. I told him he was being rude, that partners should share their days. He replied that he had tried to share things for years, and I had not listened. I said that was unfair. He did not argue. He loaded the dishwasher instead. On his phone, I noticed a new recurring reminder when it lit up on the counter one evening. It said, Harbour 2:35 p.m. Meeting. Personal. The word personal flashed like a warning light. I told myself he was probably just seeing a therapist or something, and then I decided even that was a kind of insult, like he was going to talk about what a terrible wife I was. I sent a long message to Mila, saying that Daniel was trying to build some sad revenge plan, that he wanted to make me look unstable. She replied that he was too dull to pull off anything clever. I held on to that line longer than I should have. In the parking garage under my office, we sat in the car one night after he picked me up from drinks. The concrete walls made the air feel close. I could still taste wine in my mouth. I told him that Joel was the only person who made me feel alive now, that he should be grateful anyone was interested in his wife. I wanted him to grab my hand, to shout, to beg. He asked instead what time Hannah's parent-teacher meeting was next week, said he wanted to be sure he could take her if I was busy. I called him heartless. He said he would never abandon his daughter, whatever happened between us. His voice did not shake. That night I pushed harder. In the living room, with the TV off and the room too quiet, I finally asked if he was planning to leave me. I said I needed to know whether I should bother trying or if he had already written me off. He thought for a moment, then said he was done trying to fix things in the old way. He said he would not yell, not chase, not beg anymore. He said what he would do instead was handle things properly. I laughed in his face and told him that properly sounded like a threat, not a plan. He answered that it was a plan, and that I would see that soon enough. Daniel says he will handle it properly as my phone buzzes with an event reminder titled Rooftop Bar 7:30 p.m., 10 years, and a new unknown number vibrates silently on his phone at the same time. The night of our 10-year anniversary, I walked into the rooftop bar feeling like the star of my own show. I had a new dress, new nails, and old guilt that I planned to drown in cocktails. Joel was already there with Mila and some co-workers, the music low and the lights soft. Daniel stood by the railing watching the city, holding one clear drink like it was armor. I told myself that if I made a big, honest speech, I would be the brave one, not the bad one. After a few drinks, my head felt light, and my tongue felt free. I tapped my glass and told everyone I had something real to say. I said Daniel had turned cold, that I had been so lonely that sometimes a woman has to find warmth where she can. Then I said, in too steady a voice for how drunk I was, that I had been secretly sleeping with Joel for months. People gasped. Someone's phone came up. Joel went pale. Mila's mouth fell open. I waited for Daniel to explode, to beg, to cry. Instead, he just looked at me and said he already knew. He said he had known for a long time. I laughed and called him a liar and said he was only pretending to be strong now. He answered that he was done pretending anything and that this was just the last step. Then he walked away toward the elevator without shouting once. I followed him down to the office tower lobby, still talking, still trying to twist the story. The lobby was bright and echoing, with a security guard at the desk and 2 co-workers passing through. Daniel stood near the center of the floor beside a stranger in a plain jacket. The stranger asked my name and then placed a thick envelope in my hands. The first page said, Petition for Dissolution, and listed both our names, along with temporary orders for the apartment, the bills, and a clear schedule for who would have Hannah on which days. My hands shook so hard the paper rattled. I said he could not be serious. He said he had already filed everything and that this was him handling it properly, just like he had promised.